Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me pele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Ayo me fele sama,
Me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
tisa me fele sama,
me fele sama,
ay mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
brother me fele sama,
me fele sama, me fele sama, me fele sama, me fele sama, me fele sama, me fele sama.
mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Ayo me fele sama,
Me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
tita me fele sama,
me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
me fele sama.
me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama. Ayo.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama,
Ayo me fele sama,
me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
tita me fele sama,
me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
tita me fele sama.
me fele sama.
Ghana, democracy under fire. Delving deep into the political theatre of Ghana in the lead up to the general election in December 2024, we welcome activist, organizer and writer Bonchi Anyete as our regular co-host and analyst, breaking down the dynamics in his unique and entertaining way. Tune in to our very first show, Decoding Ghana's Political Theatre, Tuesday, the 27th of February, 2024 from 8 p.m. GMT live on gotkushTV. And we look forward to you joining us every fourth Tuesday of the month throughout 2024. Ghana, democracy under fire. This is a show not to be missed.
Why are we all of a sudden having crisis in identity? At the very moment, we also talked about what? Afrocentrism and African what? Centeredness. So right at this moment, when we are beginning to coalesce and to develop a concept of African identity and Afrocentrism, we are all now suddenly in a what? Identity crisis. Is the identity crisis really there, or is what going on an attempt to do what? Create an identity crisis? Because these people are well aware of what a full and wholesome identity will do to them. And they are aware that an African-centered identity represents the end of white power and of white oppression.
Fire burn them dirty king, blaze up them dirty king, fire burn them king, send him disastrous, and time he fast with us, ancestors walk with us, fire burn them king. Tendai Mwadi, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Modzimu Mokulu. We give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. Aibobo bon komba, aibobo bon komba, aibobo, aibobo, aibobo. We welcome you, brothers and sisters, to this edition of Zivanai, coming to you live on the 30th of the month they call April, at the hour of 8 minutes past 8 in the evening if you're in the UK, and you can situate your time, brothers and sisters, wherever you are in the world. From there, we give thanks for your presence today. We give thanks for your presence today. This is Zivanai. For all those who are not aware, Zivanai is a beautiful word spoken in the Shona language, which is mostly spoken in Zimbabwe. And it simply means let us get to know each other, brothers and sisters. It emphasizes social relationship. And so this is our weekly open mic. And the format, generally speaking, is I will, raise a discussion point, and you all can come and either contribute to this discussion point that I have raised, or you can raise your own, brothers and sisters. It is all good. The only requirement is respect, indeed, brothers and sisters. So as you come through, we encourage you to like up the video. Yes, indeed, like up the video. Share the link far and wide. Share the link far and wide. Let the people know ShakaRa is live right about now. Make we talk, 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 brothers and sisters. Our subject today surrounds African Centred Education. And more specifically, what does an African-centered educational curriculum look like? That is the question, brothers and sisters. What does an African-centered educational curriculum look like? And so we're going to be breaking that down with the help of a very noted ancestor. So do stay tuned as we approach our topic, brothers and sisters. But I want to let you know that we will be here again tomorrow, brothers and sisters. We will be here again tomorrow. We will be here again tomorrow for a very, very important show. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters, a very, very important show featuring... Oh, wow. Okay, here we go. Our elder Cecil Gutsmore. Our elder Cecil Gutsmore, yes, indeed, is going to be in the building delivering to us on the subject, race in the hands of white power since the Holocaust. Race in the hands of white power since the Holocaust. I guarantee you do not want to miss that particular show, brothers and sisters. Our elder Cecil Gutsmore is a man of deep wisdom and insight, and so he's going to be breaking down some of the dynamics in relation to the current system of global Western imperialism and how they manipulate definition to suit their interests. So we're going to be delving into that tomorrow. So I look forward to seeing you all there. That's 7 p.m. GMT, 7 p.m. BST, that's British summertime, 7 p.m. British summertime. And the living is easy. Yes, indeed. British summertime, brothers and sisters. That which corresponds to 2 p.m. On the EST side of things, on the Eastern time side of things. So we look forward to seeing you there. We also have this coming Omoja Day, Sunday. Throw away the image of the white man's God, the theme for our Shumida, our African spiritual worship, every first Sunday of the month, and that corresponds to the 5th of May, next month. We're still in April. Yes, down there at the Chestnuts Community Centre in Tottenham. For all those in the UK, the subject of the message, brothers and sisters, is throw away the image of the white man's God, Haiti and the vision of African liberation. You don't want to miss that, brothers and sisters. I have the honor of doing the message on that particular day. And so when we get into our African spiritual vibration, we always have a message that focuses and centers and gives expression and purpose to the spiritual vibration that we have just raised and experienced in that time, brothers and sisters. So we want to see you down there this coming Omoja Day Sunday. Yes, indeed. We also want to let you know, for those who are stateside, yeah, this is for everybody who is in the United States of America. Yeah, special announcement. I am going to be in the United States of America for a beautiful event hosted by my spiritual mama Marimba Ani, on the 11th of May. Yeah, on Saturday, the 11th of May, Mama Marimba Ani is the host of Abakosem Sum Sum. And so we are going to be in the house on this particular day. It's in Atlanta, brothers and sisters. It's in Atlanta. And so, you know what I mean? Feel free to come down wherever you are to Atlanta on Imani Day, Saturday, the 11th of May, because this event is taking place and I will most definitely be in the house. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? I look forward to seeing all the brothers and sisters over there stateside. Should you choose to pass through, Mina go lie to Ono. It's an essential event right here. So, I've been able to attend it once a few years ago. And yeah, there are very few events like this in the global African community. And so we encourage you to come down on Omoja Day. Imani Day, Saturday, May the 11th, for Abakosem Sum Sum, brothers and sisters. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And so the whole vibe of Abakosem Sum Sum, for those who are not aware, is that it's a ritual, effectively, that gives expression to the quest for African nationhood and our liberation fight. And so literally, yeah, you'll find, as it says here, training exercises, martial arts, wrestling, archery, capoeira, and there's all kinds of ritual. There's also all kinds of ritual drama and intellectual engagement, brothers and sisters, where all things are geared towards preparing us and readying us and centering us to do work in our communities, to organize in our communities for the betterment of our people at large. All right, brothers and sisters. And so we want to see you in the house for that day, on that day, and we look forward to seeing you. Okay. All right, brothers and sisters, we are here, and we're going to get into our subject matter right about now. Yeah, right about now. All on there. Let me just check something. I need to just make sure all the technicals are in order. Okay, so this is a topic that I've been meaning to bring to Zivanai for quite some time. Yeah, and it's one that I have. I'm relatively well known for presenting and working in African Centred Education. I have been a teacher, a seba, in African-centered educational institutions for quite some time, for most of my adult life, be they Saturday schools and or home educators institutions, and so on and so forth. Variously, I have taught performing arts, I have taught English language and communication, I have taught African world history, and I have taught media studies. And so I have a significant amount of experience, practical experience within the field of African-centered education. And I've also established at one point an institution called Meducation. And Meducation is designed for two purposes: to develop African-centered learning aids for African children. And that is some work that I have done. I've developed some learning aids, and maybe I'll show you them a little bit later on. And there's more work to be done on that. That particular enterprise is on the back burner at the moment, but it will be coming back in full force at some point soon. The second aim, however, of Meducation is to develop expertise, yes, within the field of African-centered education. So that required us to engage in teacher training. And so that's a whole next subject. But because of this, I have done a significant amount of research on African-centered education in terms of its theory and its practice, yeah? And so what we're going to look at today is what an African-centered educational curriculum can and would look like. That's what we're going to be looking at today, brothers and sisters, yeah? And there's a reason why we're going to be looking at this today. What I said, I've been meaning to do this particular show for quite some time. But it's apparent to me that while we speak about African-centered education quite a bit, knowledge and information on it and what it looks like, what it is and how it would be formed and so on and so forth, is relatively low. And I say that relatively low even within the context of the Black community, even within the context of the conscious community, and sometimes even within the context of the African-centered community. In fact, last year I had an experience, where I was invited after challenging a few brothers and sisters who were disparaging the idea, the philosophy, and the movements that come under the banner of Pan-Africanism. I was actually invited to present on the Dagger Squad channel or Brother Garfield podcast, depending on however you know it, right? And so I presented a history of Pan-Africanism, and following the presentation itself, there were at least 2 conversations hosted. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to view these conversations now because for some reason those conversations have either been deleted or made private by Brother Garfield. I have no idea as to why, but at least one of them was available to watch playback for quite some time after it took place, and then I had a reason to click on the link for that the other day, and that conversation is now no longer available for playback. Yeah, but that's another story for another time. All right. So during the course of the conversation, there were brothers, mostly, I was going to say brothers and sisters, but it's really mostly brothers, who were challenging me on the validity and the viability of pursuing a Pan-African agenda in today's world. Yeah. And so one brother who goes by the name of Bobby Banger ventured to suggest that Pan-Africanists are fundamentally and inherently, and he didn't say these exact words, but this was the basic vein of what he was saying, fundamentally anti-science and anti-scientific. And so whereas I was touching on themes of African-centered education, his criteria for the viability of African-centered education seemed to be to challenge me on the extent to which Charles Darwin would be featured on the wall in an African-centered educational classroom and or environment. Yeah. And he's asking me this question in the context of whether or not we would be teaching evolution. Yeah. Now, the nature of the conversation didn't allow me to give an in-depth answer to this particular question. Yeah. Didn't really allow me to give an in-depth answer to this particular question. But what I did say is that the first place that I learned about evolution was not in the mainstream educational, the state school that I attended as a child, but in my African Centred Saturday school. This is the first place that I learned about the different stages of human evolution. The first place I can recall hearing the words Homo erectus, yeah, Neanderthal, yeah, Homo sapien, sapien, yeah, and every other variation of these stages of evolution as far as human beings are concerned. The first place I recall hearing these terminologies was in my African Centred Saturday school. All right. And also in and around the same period from the mouth of Baba, now ancestor Asa Hilliard, yeah, very, very noted scholar in the African community in the United States of America. Now, if I had more time, I would have said to brother Bobby that probably not. We probably wouldn't feature Charles Darwin on the wall in an African-centered educational institution. That doesn't mean that his picture will be banned from the classroom, but his image would not be granted center stage, yes, and prominence in such a way because we are African-centered in the African-centered educational institution. And so therefore, the images of primacy and prominence will be those that relate to African-centeredness, yeah. However, Charles Darwin not being on the wall does not represent an impediment to the youth them learning about evolution, all right? And so this now, I was surrounded by brothers and sisters who operate within the quote-unquote conscious community, yeah? And based upon the way the conversation went, demonstrated to me that even though brothers and sisters may operate within the context of the conscious community, knowledge of work, theory, and practice that comes out of the African-centered framework may be extremely low, yeah? And so that was just an anecdotal, experience to give an explanation as to why explorations such as this are extremely important, yeah? So we're going to get into the thing now. I'm going to share my screen. By the way, brothers and sisters, forgive me because I do have to leave abruptly at the hour of 10 p.m. UK time, yeah? So the show might end rather abruptly, all right? But I'm going to share the link right now. I'm going to get through some things, yeah? And then brothers and sisters can feel free to come through when the lines are open, okay? But do bear in mind that I will have to lock off the show rather quickly, okay? All right, so I'm going to share my screen, yeah? In fact, before I share my screen, let me just make you know that the majority of our explorations today, well, almost exclusively, are going to be drawn from this particular book, yeah? This particular book. Sorry, brothers and sisters, let me fix up the situation around here. All on there. Okay, this particular book, yeah, which is called Nation Building, Theory and Practice in African-Centered Education, written by now ancestor Baba Kwame Ajay Akoto. Yes, Kwame Ajay Akoto. Nation Building, Theory and Practice in African-Centered Education. It is, in my humble estimation, of all the things that I've read on the subject of African-centered education, the most detailed book. And detailed, as the title suggests, in terms of theory and practice. Yeah. And so not only is it brilliant in terms of what it details intellectually, but it is also brilliant in the sense of the fact that what it details intellectually can and is being implemented by a number of different African-centered educational institutions around the world. Yeah. And so if you are interested in the field of African centered education, this is a must read. I have tested many brothers and sisters who are also in the field of African centered education, and they all say the same thing. This is the Helios Biblis, the Bible. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters. And so there is more work to be done to build upon this, but as far as we stand at the moment, this is an essential read. And so we're going to be getting into that book in today's conversation. All right. I hope ones and ones overstand and appreciate love that. So we're going to get into the thing. As always, if you have questions or comments that you want read out, please at gotkushTV. Please at gotkushTV in the chat, and I will be certain to read out your comments, brothers and sisters, and or your questions. This is some relatively high level reasoning, yeah, that we're going to be engaging in today. Yeah, this is some relatively high level reasoning, brothers and sisters. So do stay tuned. I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to read some sections from this book. Yeah. So really what we're aimed at today is to check out what an African-centered educational curriculum would look like. Yeah, and I want to give you an idea as much as possible of what African-centered curriculums look like. This is just one example, but it's a very good example, and an example that many in this field hail as one that not only needs to be studied, but built upon and implemented as we grow our institutions with greater and greater capacity. Yeah. And so let me share the screen now so we can get in the science of the thing. All right, brothers and sisters. And yeah, I should also say that I've been having some conversations here. There are some new shows coming. For those who have been watching, you will know that Revolutionary Minds, has joined gotkushTV, a group of spoken word artists, poets, musicians, and artists of many varieties, every month studying, researching a great of our history, and then producing creative works based upon their study. And so they're going to be presenting monthly on gotkushTV. You would have seen that brother Sam P.K. Collins has come to us with All Eyes on Africa, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback about the first installment of All Eyes on Africa. So I want to give thanks to all brothers and sisters in that regard. Our We Stand with IET series is continuing, so do stay tuned for more information on that. Once again, shouting out to Mama Ezili Danto, who joined us on Umoja Day Sunday and broke it down in magnificent and expert fashion, brothers and sisters. So if you have not seen any of those shows, I encourage you to go back and check them out, brothers and sisters. All right. Please like up the video as you come through. And share the link, brothers and sisters. Share the link far and wide, especially for brothers and sisters who you think might be interested in this conversation. Okay. And so let me just big up the chat very quickly. Afro Native, my brother, big up yourself. I'll read his comment because it's about the book. It says, Hotep, this is Nana Ajay Akoto's book, co-founder of Nation House in Washington. Yep, who will be celebrating 50 years this year. That definitely. So I should have also mentioned that Nana Kwame Ajay Akoto is also an institution builder. So he founded Nation House. Him and his family founded Nation House in Washington, D.C., African Centred Educational Institution, and it will be 50 years old this year. Thank you very, very much, my brother Afro Native, for bringing that information to the platform today. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters, we need to know that there are African-centered educational institutions that have been around for 50 years, from before me born. All right. And I did mention that Nana Ajay Akoto is an ancestor now. And Scatter Minds is in the building. And he says, big up family. So big up yourself, Afro Native. Big up yourself, Scattered Minds. Big up yourself, all of the silent viewers who have not made themselves known as yet. We appreciate you and we love you. Same way. You don't know, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. All right, brothers and sisters, we're going to get into our topic right about now. We're going to get into our topic right about now. Okay. So there's a lot that I could get into, yes, where this text is concerned. For anybody who's read it, you know that it's very detailed, very comprehensive, very great, and very illuminating. Yeah. But I'm focusing on what an African-centered educational curriculum would look like. Yeah. And so I want to deal specifically with the areas of the text that relate to curriculum design. Yeah. And so I'm going into the chapter now that relates to curriculum design. Okay. Curriculum design. So we're going to get into some things and I'm going to give you an example of how the curriculum would be designed. Yeah. You will need to understand a few things, however, about the design before we actually get into the specifics of the design. Baba Kwame Ajay Akoto says, the generative theme of African-centered nationalist thought and the theme which lies at the basis of the African-centered thematic inventory. Now, the African-centered thematic sorry, let me finish the sentence. The generative theme of African-centered nationalist thought and the theme which lies at the basis of the African-centered thematic industry is nation building. Okay. Let's pause for a second. The African-centered thematic inventory is a list of themes, yeah, that form the basis, the philosophical and ideological and psychological basis for African-centered education. Okay? So these are the themes that define the nature and the purpose for the educational endeavor. Yeah. And so you have, for example, spiritual awareness is a part of the African-centered thematic inventory. Yeah. Ancestral veneration is a part of the African-centered thematic industry. Self-knowledge and practice is a part of the African-centered thematic inventory. The primacy of African civilization and the African origin of the human species is a part of the African-centered thematic inventory. African heritage and cultural unity, African-centered historical perspective, African perspective on all knowledge and intellectual endeavor, the ideological clarity and commitment to African people, beauty and aesthetics, white supremacy and racism, Pan-African political and economic unity, cooperation and development, co-equality of men and women, equal responsibility and participation, national and community leadership. Yeah, these are all central themes of the African-centered thematic inventory. There are more, yeah, very extensive. And in the book, he outlines the basic theme, the aim of this theme that is to be pursued in the inculcation and infusing of this theme within the African-centered educational curriculum. And he gives a list of different, fields and topics and, that would relate to that particular theme. Okay. And so we're not delving into the African-centered thematic inventory today, but just know that all of those things that I've mentioned and more, and if you have any questions about this, we can get into a little bit more detail, are central and foundational to the nature and purpose of African-centered education. Okay? Nation building entails, he says, reaching back into historical origins, rescuing and restoring the culture and history of African people, Sankofa. Nation building further encompasses the process of elaborating an ideology which in turn serves as a cohering force, meaning a force that is coherent for the constituency that is mobilized by it towards specific goals. And so we've got a historical context, we have present responsibility, and we have future projection. Okay, so it's not just about restoring and rescuing the past. It's not just about knowing Black history. Yeah, it's not just about knowing Black history. I was in. This is not a conversation that I was in, but a conversation that I witnessed. Yeah, and when it was around education, STEM, and political education. Yeah, and when it was said that the idea that STEM education tends to alienate you from a sense of self as an African and a sense of responsibility towards African people, that was couched in the context of students knowing their history. Yeah. Okay. And so just because you learn STEM doesn't mean that you don't know your history. All right. Which is true. Okay. However, for it to be African centered education, we are not just discussing knowledge of your history. Okay. This is not just about, I know who Tenka is. I know who Nanny of the Maroons is. I know which African scientist invented the carbon filament in the light bulb. I know what Africans in Congo contributed to science. This is not what we are discussing. It's a part of what we are discussing, but that in and of itself does not make it African-centered education. The rescuing and restoring of the culture and the history serves as a part of a cohering force for the constituency, i.e., African people. The constituency in this context is African people that is mobilized by it towards specific goals. So African-centered education has got specific goals, brothers and sisters. And those specific goals go beyond the children knowing their history. Okay? Nation building as the generative theme for the philosophical foundation of the African-centered curriculum will necessarily act as the guiding principle for the design of the African-centered curriculum. Big up Meloman in the building. If I'm late because I'm getting distracted by Kendrick Lamar Flaming Drake. You know what? That's another subject for another time, yeah. I need to listen to the track again before I can claim, I can state, you know, who's in the lead right about now. But it was interesting. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we give tags. All right? Okay. So the goal is nation building, and because the goal is nation building, now remember, the goal is nation building. The goal is not knowing Black history. The goal is nation building, and within the context of achieving nation building, knowing and learning Black history becomes imperative. That is the point. We have to understand that. Knowing Black history is not an end in and of itself. Okay? It is a part of a specific goal, which is nation building. And because the ultimate goal is nation building, that goal informs how the curriculum is organized, how it is administered. And how the children experience the educational institution, how the adults experience the educational institution, brothers and sisters. Let us go forward. Given the guiding role of nation building as a theme and the subject of the theme in the African Centred Thematic Inventory, ACTI, yeah. And for those who are late, I've already explained what the African Centred Thematic Inventory is. You're going to have to wait and rewind the video to get back into that. But just as a brief explanation, the African Centred Thematic Inventory are the basic and central themes, the foundational and essential themes that give expression to the nature and purpose of African-centered education. Given the guiding role of nation building as a theme and the subject of theme in African-centered thematic inventory, it follows that the design of the African-centered curriculum must meet several criteria. Listen carefully. First, the organization of the subject content must be integrated both horizontally and vertically in such a way as to stress holism. The organization of the subject content must be integrated both horizontally and vertically in such a way as to it stresses holism and provides adequate details appropriate for the level of instruction or cognitive level of the students and comprehensive enough to maintain the interrelated nature of the curricular fields. You may not understand all of that right about now. Don't worry. When you actually see a diagram of a curriculum as outlined in this text, you will understand it a little bit more. The essential point here, however, is that the African-centered curriculum must stress the wholeness and interrelatedness of the subjects that are being taught. In other words, we're not teaching a bunch of topics and subjects as though they are separate and distinct from each other. The nature of the educational process must give expression to the relatedness of these varying different fields, and the children must be educated in a way that that relatedness is apparent to them and they are able to think holistically. Yes? Okay. Second, the curriculum must be purposeful and mission-oriented. That mission being the reconstitution of Africans as a unified cultural, political, and economic self-determinant national identity. The mission is the reconstitution of Africans as a unified cultural, political, and economic self-determinant national identity. The mission is not to get the children to pass them GCSEs as it relates to the UK, SATs as it relates to the USA, baccalaureate as it relates to the Europe. It is not to get the youth them all to have a doctorate, a PhD. That doesn't mean that the children shouldn't pass their GCSEs, their SATs, their baccalaureate. It doesn't mean that the pit of them and the young adults should not get degrees and PhDs and so on and so forth. But this is not the purpose and the mission of African-centered education. The mission and the purpose of African-centered education is not to have more black people working for NASA and more black people working for Tesla and more black people in the government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and in the government of France and in the government of the United States of America. The goal and the mission and the purpose of African-centered education is not to have more black-owned companies operating on Silicon Valley. Yeah, that is not the mission and the purpose. The mission and the purpose is reconstitution of Africans as a unified cultural, political, and economic self-determinant national entity. That is the mission and the purpose. And if your PhD and your GCSE and your technical and scientific brilliance in any field does not or is not being contributed towards this mission and purpose, we are not dealing with African-centered education. All right? Okay. Third, the curriculum must reflect a humanistic concern with the self-awareness of the learner and the dynamic and reciprocal relationship of the teacher, learner, family, and community. Let me read that one there again. Third, the curriculum must reflect a humanistic concern with the self-awareness of the learner. The learner must be self-aware. And the dynamic and reciprocal relationship of the teacher, learner, family, and community. In other words, African-centered education is a community endeavor. In other words, the learner must have a knowledge and awareness of themselves. They must be taught to self-analyze, self-critique, self-develop on the individual level. They must understand themselves as a part of a family and a community. They must understand themselves as both learner and teacher. And in what context they are learner, in what context they are teacher, and what context they are both, because more often than not, you are both. All right. The fourth criteria of the African-centered curriculum is that it be integrated with the real efforts of institutions and individuals that are actively engaged in the nation-building process. So Mama Marimba Ani had the pleasure of interviewing her one time. We were honoring the life and legacy of Baba Bobby E. Wright. And in expressing the brilliance of Baba Bobby E. Wright, Mama Marimba said that one of the things that he outlined was that African-centered educational institutions are good and necessary, but they will become redundant if there are not institutions ready to receive the graduates of said institutions. In other words, the work that and the skills, that these children, these young people gain through the African-centered educational process must be applicable to institutions that exist or are being developed within the community itself. And so their skills are being put towards the development of those institutions, those that already exist, if they exist, and the development of those that don't exist, should they not yet exist. Yes. So whatever is taking place in the community at whatever level, whatever capacity, our young people must be made to be aware of it and must be involved in it. And must be given an educational trajectory through which they understand their responsibility to contribute to the development of more of it and increase the capacity through progressive stages of development. We open on overstand what the thing I say and all the thing I got. If brothers and sisters are appreciating the brilliance, the wisdom, the genius of Baba Kwame Ajay Akoto, give me some black power fist in the chat. I want to see some black power fist in the chat before we go any further. If you're feeling the vibration and the brilliance and the genius of Baba Kwame Ajay Akoto. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah. And when I get into it, I told a little story at the beginning for those who were late about the fact that I was challenged on the extent to which African Centred Education is scientific and deals with science once, yeah. And you are going to understand why such a question is ridiculous, yeah, when I get into the depth of outlining what the curriculum would look like. Now, bear in mind that the question that I'm focusing on today is, what would an African-centered educational curriculum look like? Yeah. So all of this is just a background, a foundation for you understanding when I present what it will look like based upon the brilliance and the genius of Baba Kwame Ajay Akoto. This is the explanation that gives expression to the actual form that you're going to see very shortly, brothers and sisters. All right. So we give thanks for all those who are sharing their Black Power fists in the chat. By the way, brothers and sisters, what was I going to say? If you want to ask questions in the chat, if you want your comments to be read out, please at gotkushTV. Yeah, please at gotkushTV. Okay. All right. So let's go forward. So he's mentioned already, prior to where we picked up the reading, 3 aforementioned curricular domains, yeah, of the African-centered thematic inventory. Yes. So he says the 3 aforementioned curricular domains of the African-centered thematic inventory are the cultural stroke ideological. That's one curricular domain. Yes. The spiritual stroke psycho-effective. That's another curricular domain. And the socio-political and economic. That's another curricular domain. Yeah. So he's already mentioned 3 curricular domains: the cultural ideological, the spiritual psycho-effective, and the socio-political and economic. These are 3 curricular domains. Note the language, curricular domain. Okay. A 4th domain is required in order to facilitate the mastery of scientific and technological processes that the contemporary societies increasingly demand. Repete. A 4th domain is required in order to facilitate the mastery of scientific and technological processes that the contemporary societies increasingly demand. In other words, scientific and technological knowledge, understanding, and application is essential to an African-centered curriculum. Why? Because in order to achieve the mission of reconstitution of Africans as a unified cultural, political, and economic self-determinant national entity, we are unable to do that in this day and age without the knowledge, understanding, and application of science and technology. More open to understand when may I say. But the 3 prior curricular domains give the context for the acquisition of the knowledge and the context for the application of the knowledge. In other words, why we are being taught this and how we should use it. If we don't sort out the cultural, ideological, the spiritual, psycho-effective, and the socio-political and economic, the knowledge of the scientific and technological will not have a context. And that makes it easy to be co-opted by other people to serve FIDEM interests within FIDEM context. Marcus Garvey says so. The fourth domain, so is simply labeled technology. So we've got 4 domains so far: the cultural ideological, the spiritual psychoaffective, the socio-political and economic, and technology. In order to fulfill the 4th criteria of African Centred curriculum as described above, a 5th curricular domain must be added, that of practical application or nation building. So we have 5 curricular domains: cultural ideological, spiritual psychoaffective, socio-political and economic, technology, and you could say science and technology, and practical application or nation building. 5 curricular domains. The 5 curricular domains provide the basis for the organization of the subject content. Now, for those who've been paying attention, what the curriculum looks like is beginning to already form in your mind. If the curriculum is already forming in your mind, give me some black power fists in the chat. Someone know can put up the black power fist because your black power fist is contaminated with a Union Jack. Someone can put up the black power fist because your black power fist is contaminated with the stars and stripes. Someone can't put up the black power fist because your black power fist is contaminated with the wielding of the tricolor. The tricolor. Yeah, the tricolor. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters. But if you are of the self-determining African spirit, energy and vibration, and the nature of the African Centred curriculum is beginning to form in your mind, and your black power fist is blessed to have in its palm the colors of the red, the black, and the green, feel free to give me some black power fist in the chat, brothers and sisters. Feel free to give me some black power fist in the chat, brothers and sisters. Each curricular domain consists of one or more curricular fields. So you have curricular domains and you have curricular fields. The curricular fields provide the actual structural basis for the organization and presentation of subject matter within the curriculum. The purpose of listing the several fields under the curricular domains is to establish their relationship with the assumptions and aims of the African-centered thematic inventory. The curricular fields are listed below under the curricular domains and include the subject areas that would comprise the respective fields. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Let's get into the center of the thing. So what would the African Centred curriculum look like? Now, there's more details, in the book, but this is the basic outline, And I think this is the good way to go because it provides, a visual representation that I believe can be easily understood. And so what you see here are the 5 curricular domains listed. 1, cultural, ideological. 2, spiritual, psychoaffective. 3, socio-political and economic. Yes, indeed, His Majesty. Then 4, technology. And 5, nation building, practical application. Okay. And so under the curricular domain of the cultural and ideological. The curricular fields are culture and ideology. Culture and ideology. Yes? Culture and ideology. Papa Garvey said that we must build our institutions according to our own culture and civilized idealisms. Papa Garvey said we must build our institutions according to our own culture and civilized idealisms. So that our culture and civilized idealism are not the same as others. And so we must build our institutions according to the dictates of our own culture and civilized idealism to suit and reach the goals which are specifically our own. Words of Papa Garvey. The most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey says so. Culture and civilized idealism. That is an African centered statement. Let us be clear. The second curricular domain is the spiritual psycho-effective. And so that includes curricular fields such as self-knowledge, ethics, and morality. Yes, self-knowledge, ethics, and morality. Okay, these are curricular fields under the curricular domain of the spiritual psycho-effective. All right. Then you have 3, the socio-political and economic. The curricular domain, the curricular fields under the curricular domain of the socio-political and economic are political economy, cognition and inquiry, technology, mathematics, sciences, computer. Pay attention to the fact that technology is a curricular field under the curricular domain of the socio-political and economic, and it is also a curricular domain in and of itself. So I went to mainstream education, brothers and sisters, and very few of these things are taught explicitly, because we're being educated not to understand political economy, but to subordinate ourselves and contribute to the political economy of the society in which we live. Not question it too much, toe the line, and so on. Yes? Interesting. Also want to point out that computer, also what might be known as computer sciences, is a curricular field in and of itself. Understanding the nature and the importance of computer sciences in today's world. Yeah, and just to be clear about this, this book was published in 1992. Okay, understand that. The man who wrote this book is the founder. He and his family are the founders of an educational institution that is celebrating 50 years of its existence this year. The fourth curricular domain, technology. And the curricular fields under technology, again, mathematics. So mathematics is a curricular field under socio-political and economic. It is also a curricular field under technology. Science, again, doubles as a curricular field under socio-political and economic, and as a curricular field under technology. And I'll explain why that is in a second. Then you also have, again, computer science, And then you have functional skills. Yeah. And that relates to many different things, but including the capacity and ability to invent. Yeah. Based upon the needs of a people or a community. Yeah. These are the curricular fields under technology. And then 5, nation building, practical applications. Curricular fields under the curricular domain of practical application or nation building. A, career development, apprenticeships, research theory and practicums, community development projects, organizational experience. Once again, under the curricular domain of nation building, the subject areas or curricular fields are career development and apprenticeship. That relates to how do I forward the application of my knowledge in the environment that I'm in, as much as possible contributing to the needs of my community. Yeah. Some fields, in order to master them, you have to develop and go through an apprenticeship, possibly within the context of an institution that we don't yet own and control. That is a reality that we have to negotiate. And so the African Centred curriculum is not just dealing in ideals, but realities, recognizes the necessity to develop the young person in such a way that they are able to understand that reality and negotiate it within the context of pursuing specific goals. Research theory and practicums. This is a very important one. Yes, because research is a skill in and of itself. So you have to be taught how to research and how to apply the findings of said research practically to the development of African people. Community development projects. That means you must have the wisdom, the wherewithal, and the purview to be able to look into your community and see what the community needs and develop projects and programs to meet those needs. Or to see what programs and projects already exist and assess where and how they need to be developed and built upon, and what you and I, us and we can do in order to build and develop upon them. And then organizational experience. You must have the experience of being in organization with African people, meeting the needs of African people. Your only organization experience cannot be within this white institution or that white institution, be it educational, governmental, professional, charity, or otherwise. That you must have the organizational experience of being in organization with African people, serving the interest of African people. That's why, when we had African Centred Educational institutions, we've engaged the children in whatever is going on in the African community, whether it's going to serve the elders lunch or dinner at a particular program, whether it's attending the African Emancipation Day Reparations March, whether it's getting the older children within the educational institution to teach the younger children within the educational institution, whether it's going to do some gardening on the allotment, and so on and so forth. All right, we must be engaged in organizational efforts in the community. Yes, whether it's going to put out the chairs and the tables and the decorations at a Kwanzaa event, whether it's engaging the young people in a partner. All of those things relate to educational experience. So this is what an African-centered educational curriculum would look like. This is what an African-centered educational curriculum would look like, brothers and sisters. Yes? And so within that final one, we might, for example, from the basis of teaching the young people about partner, we might now develop that under the field of the socio-political and economic, with understanding how partner relates to things like credit union. Yeah? How partner relates to the development of cooperative credit unions. For example, I hope ones I appreciate, love, and appreciate and understand where me I say. Let's go forward. We're nearly there. Each curricular domain includes several specific subjects that are integrated to reduce the compartmentalization that is typical of subject-centered curriculums. Yeah, so oftentimes subject-centered curriculums encourage compartmentalization. Okay, so that the relationship of one curricular field or subject to the other is not emphasized, and therefore is not obvious, or therefore is not experienced by the learner in the experience of their learning. An obvious one to this, an obvious example of this is mathematics, yeah? Because it's often stated, well, how am I going to use this in real life? Yeah? Well, the African-centered educational curriculum takes care of that, because mathematics is a subject or a curricular field under the socio-political economic curricular domain and the technology domain. So in other words, there's an application for mathematics in political economy, cognition and inquiry, technology, science, and computer studies. There's an application for mathematics in science, computer science, and functional skills. That is emphasized through the administration of the curricular fields in relationship to the curricular domains. The experience of independent schools have demonstrated that when the several related subjects are grouped into a singular curricular field and taught by a singular instructor or team, the subject material is made more meaningful to students. This is an essential point. He says the experiences of independent schools, we have to develop the confidence as African people to understand that we have institutions through that we can research and derive the findings from to develop expertise in the application of what we have developed. I wonder if you don't understand what I say. That we must have faith in the effectiveness of what we have been developing, that we are able to systematize it in bodies of research. Because what we have developed and the findings from the research into what we have developed is no less valuable than any other people's institutions. And in fact, it's even more valuable in relation to ourselves. The students also recognize the relationship of several areas of study, and the demonstration of the social relevancy is facilitated. Additional benefits of this design include the ability of instructors at all levels, primary through secondary, to focus their attention and additional study on related fields of study. So that this methodology now not only develops the students, but develops the teachers in terms of the fields of study and expertise that they develop regarding how they administer their lessons. Generally, the instruction at the primary and middle school levels is organized so that a single instructor is responsible for all subject areas. Given the natural inclination of individual instructors to favor the area of their greatest competence, the use of the curricular fields model at the primary and middle school levels has the potential to achieve greater levels of productivity. In other words, we're able to compartmentalize as much as possible, but compartmentalize as much as necessary, but synchronize as much as possible. Current experience is provided as well as increases the level of accountability. Okay, we're going to move on because I've got through it all, yeah? So I want to share one more thing with you, yeah? And that is some word sounds of Nana Amos Wilson before we conclude, yeah? And oh, it's the wrong one. All our brothers and sisters. You know when you update the presentation, here we go. Yeah. Now, there were some words that I mentioned earlier in relation to understanding holism. Yeah. So I'll explain it a bit later. What these words sounds and then Amos Wilson do so. He says, when we go to these universities and these schools, one of the greatest deceptions that is run upon us is the idea that the things that we are taught in these schools are non-political, that they are neutral, that they are somehow universal. And of course, whites run a beautiful game on us when they name their courses without putting their ethnicity in front of them. They don't say white psychology, white education, white economics, white physics, white chemistry. And we often naively assume that because they are called economics, psychology, anthropology, that means we are in a course that has general and universal meanings. And we are made to think that we are odd when we call our courses Black study. But every course, and I substituted American for UK here, in UK college and university and in the UK educational establishment is a course in white studies. And every course and every discipline is designed essentially for the same thing, to maintain white power. We must be very conscious of that, and we must recognize that a major part of the education of our children and of ourselves is the fact that we have to politicize the courses that we are taking, even science, even physics and chemistry. Scientific discovery and technological development take place within a political, social structure. Repete. Scientific discovery and technological development take place within a political, social structure. Therefore, it is not enough to just teach your children physics and chemistry. You must teach them the politics of physics and chemistry. You must teach them the economics of physics and chemistry. What did man say a while ago? Therefore, it is not enough to teach your children physics and chemistry. You must teach them the politics of physics and chemistry. You must teach them the economics of physics and chemistry. And one day we'll go into that a little bit deeper. But that concludes, our exploration for today's session, brothers and sisters. So just, I hope ones and ones appreciate love that. Yeah, if you appreciate love that, give me some black power fists in the chat, or those whose fist is not contaminated by holding the Union Jack and the Stars and Stripes and the tricolor. Give me some Black Power fists in the chat. And whilst you're doing that, you can also click the link here that I'm sharing now to join the conversation. You can join the conversation right about now, brothers and sisters. Click the link to join the conversation on African Centred Education and what an African Centred curriculum would look like. Yes, indeed. Whilst you are clicking the link, let me just remind you that tomorrow we are going to be blessed with the presence of Baba Cecil Gutsmore, dealing with race in the hands of white power since the Holocaust. Race in the hands of white power since the Holocaust. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, 2 p.m. Eastern time, brothers and sisters. All right, you can feel free to come through. Brothers and sisters. Yeah, at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Elder Cecil Gutsmore, race in the hands of white power since the Holocaust. I don't know why I missed that one there. I need to go through also and check that if there are any comments and or questions for in relation to this subject matter that I've just been presenting on. So I'm going to do that right about now. And those who want to come through live and click the link, feel free to do so if you want to, come through and let us see your pretty face and hear your beautiful velvet voice. Feel free to do that right about now, brothers and sisters. Yeah, we welcome you. I'm just going to pin the link to the top of the chat. And also, I want to let you know that we have a WhatsApp group as well as a Telegram group that you can receive your notifications on all things gotkushTV. So those links are in the description. So you can feel free to check those out. And I am in the process, brothers and sisters, of planning a session on Pan-African or African nation building and engineering. Yeah, African nation building and engineering. Yeah, so do stay tuned for that, brothers and sisters. Do stay tuned for that. We're going to bring that to you live and direct very soon. Okay. Yeah, so let me see. So I'm looking for all comments that at gotkushTV. All comments that are at in gotkushTV, I'm looking for them now. So I'm going to come to them independently in a second. So I got through them. All right. Okay. So if you haven't added gotkushTV, I'm not starring your comment yet. So if anybody wants a comment or a question read out and addressed, please feel free to at gotkushTV and or click the link. By the way, brothers and sisters, I have to depart rather swiftly in just under 40 minutes. Yeah, in just under 40 minutes. All right. So don't leave it to the last minute for come on, because when the top of the hour reach, I have to go away. Yeah, the show will be ending promptly at the top of the hour, brothers and sisters. Yeah, so if you do want to say something or you want a comment or a question addressed, get it in right about now. Click the link right about now. All right, I think I've got everything that tagged gotkushTV. There are 4 comments. If I have missed anything, please let me know. All right, please let me know. Okay. Melaman say, gotkushTV, I've always sought to understand how physics or math can be different for different races or political beliefs. It's in the application. Now, there are maths is more of a cultural phenomenon than you might be made to understand, or we might be made to understand. Yeah. So for example, different cultures engage mathematics differently. Yeah. It doesn't mean that the maths, one set of maths is any better or superior than the other necessarily. But there are counting systems, for example, that exist in Yoruba culture. Yeah. that are unique to it. You know what I'm saying? And so there are different ways that different cultures have developed the discipline of mathematics. Okay. So there are differences and similarities. There are things that are universal as it relates to mathematics, and there are things that are culturally specific. But we have to appreciate that the application of these disciplines is where the fundamental, as it relates to our current environment, the fundamental differences lie. The other aspect of it might also be the fact that of application in terms of the values of the culture. Yeah. So it might be the case that what we discover in terms of physics is the same. Yeah. From culture to culture, but how we apply that knowledge is different. So it might be the case, for example, that our application of physics in one culture, manifests itself in ways that are destructive to the natural environment. In another culture, applying physics in ways that destroy the natural environment might be taboo. This what I'm saying, yeah. So it's in those kinds of things, yeah. So we don't have to feel that we need to throw away this knowledge that has been acquired in the last 200 to 500 years simply because we didn't acquire it. Well, we wasn't at the helm of its acquisition as a culture, even if individuals among us may have been, yeah. But we have to understand these disciplines within our own cultural matrix. All right. Talawasan, but you want to feel tests. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, bro. You have to remind me what you're referring to. That's all. Talawa also says, jokes aside, I like how the author explains this as nationalist project. Too often I see infusion BS. Indeed. I agree. I think the science people suffer from the compartmentalization problem Mama Marimba Ani identified with scientism. Of course, you are correct. Yes, that is the word that she used. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So if there are, those are the comments that I saw starred. If there are any further comments, that I've missed, please highlight them for me. Either the individual that posted them, or those who have modded. You can repost them for me. And without further ado, let me bring forward Coffee Campbell to the platform. Greetings.
Yo, greetings. Yo, you want to come on this evening?
So far,
everybody missing in action. No arguments and debates today.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of an Afrocentric curriculum, we've been hearing this for decades and stuff. But in your view, the implementation of this curriculum by a people without a nation in the diaspora, especially in Western nations, you think the implementation of these projects is better served if we can create schools and create institutions for ourselves within Western society, separate and apart from the state? You think an environment that allows us to easier to do that with less costly regulation to set up schools and to source materials, etc., for independent schools? You think a less costly environment would be more conducive to the spread of Afrocentric independent institutions among Black people in the Western countries?
Short of actually having a nation established, the realities of African people around the world would be taken into consideration wherever our institutions are being established. So it stands to reason that we would take advantage of whatever works in our favor within any particular environment. Yeah. The ultimate understanding, however, within the African Centred Educational mission and purpose is that the societies in which we live, be they where we are the majority or where we are not the majority, are not conducive, to the goal, and the institutions, of the societies in which we live, be they where we are the majority or where we are not the majority, are not conducive to the purpose and mission of African-centered education. That is the reconstitution of Africans as a unified cultural, political, and economic self-determinant national entity. Yeah. So there may be environments that make such the establishment of such institutions easier. There may be environments that make the establishment of such institutions harder. There may be environments whereby the differences in terms of what makes it easier and what makes it harder may just be different, but there may not be a stratification in terms of this one is overall easier, that one is overall easier. It may be this one is easier in this way but more difficult in that way. It may be this one is and that one is easier in that way but more difficult in this way. But no society that operates within the context of Western imperialism, global white supremacy, which is the global order that we live in at the moment, can be considered sufficient and welcoming to the ideals of African-centered education and their formation. Yeah, so that's the understanding where that is concerned.
Well, I don't think we're talking about whether white society, quote unquote, will accept Afrocentricity. But I think it is objectively clear that a communist society like Cuba would be very unwelcoming to Afrocentricity and independent Black institutions and independent Black values and thoughts and views separate and apart from the communist dictatorship. Yeah. So, because the very idea of private property and the rights to private property, that is what can allow people to have their private thoughts and market these private thoughts and acquire printing press and publish books and so forth and disseminate tapes, etc., and disseminate Afrocentric knowledge. It's no accident that in America and in England you had the explosion of the Afrocentric book revolution, where you had independent publishers disseminating suppressed knowledge of the mainstream. Even in America, that is supposed to be liberal, knowledge was still suppressed in the mainstream institutions. However, especially since the 60s with the Black Studies curriculum, etc., and the Afrocentric books, you can't really suppress it in a liberal society. It's always going to bubble up to the surface if you have property rights protections. And it is no accident that you don't find this in Cuba. You never had this kind of explosion in Cuba. Yeah, you have a little token Santeria or whatever them have over there with that with the Cuban Afro-religious expressions. But as I heard Tony Martin say one time, that these have to be tied to the communist government. Them heavily police it. It's not really independent over there. So again, how best Afrocentricity and Black nationalism can flourish, are going to depend on the philosophical foundations of the society that we find ourselves in.
So, because the goal and mission of this particular process is not to fight the Cold War or to decide upon which European nation state or nation state governed by European political and economic values is the best. We are not confined to Eurocentric ideals, whether they come from Adam Smith or Karl Marx. The consideration of Cuba versus America, whilst not irrelevant, is not paramount. Yeah, both Cuba and America, within the context of their current formation, would be considered insufficient, inadequate, alien, and destructive to the development of African nationhood. It may be the case that there are some things in Cuba that are more difficult than they are in America. It may also be the case that there are some things in America that are more difficult than they are in Cuba. It may be the case that American society, yes, because of how it's structured and mostly because of the fight that Africans have waged in America, may manifest itself in ways that offer certain benefits. The same may be the case for the Cuban society, yes? But neither of these would be considered sufficient. Whatever their benefits are not sufficient for meeting our ultimate goals and our ultimate needs. So we will not be defined by a conflict that is defined by Europeans and be confined to the dictates of that conflict, whereby we are cajoled and seduced into aligning with one over the other. That is not the purpose of African Centred Education. And we'll leave that fight to those who are impassioned by that fight. Our goal is self-determining and self-determination. Okay, so that's where that is concerned. I'll say that, and then I will make this give this by way of example. Black studies in the United States of America received a fight and continues to receive a fight. It has never not received a fight. Black studies in America flourished in spite of the American establishment, not because of it. And one of the reasons why our brothers and sisters who formulated the frameworks and institutions of Black studies in the United States of America were able to be successful is because a lot of that success came in a revolutionary environment, which was the revolutionary 60s. In other words, students and movements that were connected to student movements were threatening to burn down the place. Yes, demanded certain educational materials in educational institutions, formed institutions to facilitate a certain kind of education. And what happened was that the establishment realized, listen, we better concede to this, this, and this. Otherwise, these people are going to mash up the society. That's what happened. Then they also moved to try and water down, attack, yeah, and otherwise neutralize the revolutionary impact of what Black studies originally was in the hands of the movement. Yeah, so we don't celebrate the co-opting of our movements and the products of our movements by the system and society of the oppressor. Yeah, we don't celebrate that uncritically. We understand the sacrifice of our ancestors, and we also pay close attention to the extent to which the enemy recalibrates, yes, and attempts to co-opt what we have created to suit their ultimate mission and purpose rather than our own. Yeah, we have to be very, very clear about that as it relates to these matters, brothers and sisters, okay? Then I will say this. When the Cuban Revolution happened, one of the things that was done by the government in that circumstance was the banning of over 100 Black organizations. The oppression of Africanness in Cuba is well known to any nationalist worth their stripes, who views and analyzes from the perspective of what is good for African people. It would also be true to say, however, that many Africans in the Caribbean who wanted an education in medical fields went to Cuba to get that education. Yeah, that's a fact. Members of my own family have taken advantage of that. And some of them didn't go to Cuba, but received education from people in Cuba in their own nation. That happens in spite of the ascendancy of Africans with an African-centered consciousness within the medical field, within that environment. That happens in spite of, not because of, yes, the Cuban establishment and its dictates, brothers and sisters. And so we can take advantage of the fact that our brothers and sisters in America fought the American establishment, its institutions, its corporations, its government, to the extent that they were forced to make certain concessions. We can acknowledge the fact that our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and in Cuba fought to be able to be educated in a certain, field to a certain degree, and recognize the benefits that that particular environment affords us to pursue certain things for our own agenda. But we will not define our agenda by that society. That's what African Centred Education teaches us to do. All right. So I hope I've answered your question. Greetings, Mr. IC3.
Greetings. Yes, wonderful presentation. So I want to dig into two things. There appears to be some. I don't fully understand the roots of the disagreement between you and Kofi. Is it that? Because I think it's interesting to explore the differences in view. Is it that you understand the market to really be a white supremacist construct, and Kofi believes that the market has no bias? Is that
I'm going to okay, it's Zivanai, it's open mat, so I'm going to allow this. But the conversation that I'm raising today is not about differences between me and any individual, including Kofi. Yeah.
Right.
However, your assessment of my understanding of the market is correct. Yeah, that the market is not the market. It is a white power institution,
right,
that has been imposed on the rest of the world, and they give the illusion of universality, as Nana Amos Wilson was saying earlier, as they do to every other field of study. So it's not unique to the market. They give it in the field of psychology, they give it in the field of history, they give it in the field of politics. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
the universalism of whiteness, I challenge in all its formations.
Right.
Whether it's economic, political, scientific, whatever it is, I challenge it in all its formations. Right.
Well, I would agree with your position. It's just that it appears that a lot of people don't actually catch that. They think that it's just that the market is just even, as anybody could do. Okay, I think you've made that.
Well, I said the market is just voluntary interaction between individuals. So right now, this is the market going on. Me, you, and ShakaRa is engaged in voluntary interactions right now. Nobody's being forced, even though I think we're forcing this topic onto ShakaRa, because even though ShakaRa said is Zivanai and any topic, come say what you want. It's clear, say it's clear him don't really want certain topics. You know what I mean? So but
it's a very serious
but however, nobody's going a gun to his head and say that he has to do this. He's only agreeing to do this because him see it in his interest to let this conversation go on. He can stop it anytime. He can kick me off anytime because it is his property, and this is a free exchange of ideas. The market is just free association and free disassociation. Yeah, that is all the market is.
And so the issue with that IC3 is that what is properly referred to as the market in today's world is an institution of mass force, mass coercion, mass
source
seduction.
What source?
And
what
mass
source you have for that?
imposition.
What source?
For example, IC3, when we talk about the market as it exists today, the market is backed up as it exists today by the American dollar and the American dollar is connected to the American military.
Yes.
And when there are people who are acting against the interests of America
Yes.
in the market,
Yes.
America's diplomacy, America's foreign policy, America's economic institutions will go to war with said
Yes.
individuals. There are people
You're taking
who
notes,
were-
I see.
who existed. There were people who existed on this planet, on this plane of existence, who are now dead because they went against the interest of America on the market. There
Yes.
are the economies of the nations of the world have been attacked and subdued in this world so that they can suit the interest of not just America, but Britain and France on the market. The global market includes the France Afrique, which is a group of nations that were formerly colonized by France that have been subdued to the point whereby they are beholden to France economically, to the point whereby collectively they send over 500 billion to France annually. Yes, and whenever any leader among those nations has sought to end that relationship, that leader has met the fate of overthrow or death, as backed up by France, as backed up by America, as backed up by Britain, and all of the rest of these Western neocolonial nation states as it stands at the moment, Mr. IC3. So no,
Right.
we don't exist in a market of free association and free disassociation.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist.
It doesn't
again,
exist.
The market.
But you're doing it now.
Excuse me, thank you.
Yes.
Excuse me, thank you. Thank you. Excuse me. Right. The market, yeah, and this is the sleight of hand, yeah. The market as it exists, the philosophy of the market that they project is what Mama
Who is
Marimba
there?
Ani,
Call name.
what Mama Marimba Ani refers to as the rhetorical ethic, yes, which are statements in the mouths of white power that apply only to them and fit them relationship with each other at best. It is
Right.
not a reflection of how they relate to the rest of the world.
Right.
All right,
Yeah.
so name the one scholar.
Sorry. Coffee. IC3 is on the floor at the moment. Thank you very much.
Okay. Right. Okay. I mean, okay. The next thing.
By the way, make it quick, yeah, IC, because like I said,
Yeah,
I've got less than 50 minutes before I gotta
Pan-Africanism
run. Mhm.
and Pan-Blackism. I think that there appears there needs to be some clarification over Africanism and Blackism. That there has to be, in order to be able to organize effectively against the power of white supremacy. There's too much confusion.
It's very simple. It's very simple. Black is the color of our skin. African is the substance of our being. African, the term African, and we're not necessarily married to the phonetics of African, but what it means, yes. The term African relates to land, heritage, ancestry, culture, yeah, or land, heritage, ancestry, and a cultural complex, yeah. Understanding that we're not dealing with necessarily a monolith of a cultural monolith, but a cultural matrix that embraces certain cultural values, principles, and expressions. Yeah,
And
so
appearance, does it embrace
and
appearance?
appearance, yeah, and appearance, right? So our black skin, but the appearance doesn't come before the culture. Yes, we understand our blackness as our most definitive physical characteristic, but blackness in and of itself is not sufficient. Is not a sufficient basis upon which to build nation civilization. You need culture for that, because we're talking about principles and values, not just aesthetics. But aesthetics is important. We're not gonna, especially because within the context of the oppression that we have faced under what is considered to be white supremacy,
Yes,
our aesthetics have been attacked as the symbol of our heritage, as the symbol of our culture. Yeah,
Yes.
but we cannot be to focus on aesthetics alone is to be superficial, if that makes sense. Yeah,
right.
we must.
But
we must.
is aesthetics absolutely necessary, though? Is it
100%. 100%. I don't want to be anything other than a beautiful black, big nose, big lip. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Africa.
Stereotype. That's a stereotype. That's a stereotype.
I don't want any other woman on the planet other than
That's
a
a
big
stereotype.
nose, big lip, thick lips,
Okay.
big buttock, wide
Right.
hip African woman.
Right.
That alone are going around there.
That's a
Right, but you
racist
would accept
stereotype.
a white person as a white person who learned the culture and was accepted as a chief. You would accept that person as an African if they behaved
No.
correctly.
No. Now,
No.
having said that, right? Having said that,
Hey.
having said that, from a position of power, yeah, from a position of power, Africans are entitled to define ourselves and according to whatever suits our interest. If that makes sense, yeah.
No.
From a position of power. So,
From
what
a
I'm saying is
position
that,
of
yes,
power.
from a position of power, we
right.
are allowed to define what constitutes Africanness for ourselves, if that makes sense.
Right. So a white person who is in power, using the power of white supremacy, who defines himself as African, and he's accepted by all Africans, can take part in the definition. Correct?
No, I'm not saying that. But I am saying that should we collectively choose to include this person or that person for our own interest, we are at liberty to do so. I just don't necessarily advocate that we do, right? This is what I'm saying. Yeah. So I'm saying our definition is our own. And from a position of power, we are allowed to define ourselves and who is allowed to be defined alongside us. Right. I am saying that in this dispensation of time, as it relates to our condition, we must be definitive on the race issue. That we must have understanding of Africanness and blackness as racial and cultural, because they are not distinct, they are related.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
All right, brothers and sisters. All right, I'm gonna go through and just double check if there's any at gotkushTVs. I see one there, another one there. Hold on. I'm coming to your comments, brothers and sisters. If you got any for the last 8 minutes, feel free to get them in now, because I have to go in 8 minutes, brothers and sisters. Work after Guan. Yeah. And I will let you know, I'm not off job. I've got a meeting to attend in the interest of gotkushTV. And so should this meeting go well, we got some beautiful things coming to you, brothers and sisters. All right. So do stay tuned. So I've only seen 2 other comments. Yeah. If I've missed anything, let me know. Talawa says heavyweight girl. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that we deal with around here. I prefer the word woman though. You know what I mean? I just prefer the word woman. You know, that's it. But yeah, man, we like wait on it. Yeah, that's how fit we thing there. You know what I mean? All right. And Anthony says Abibi Fahodie. Okay, brothers and sisters. All right. Let me know if I missed anything. I'll give you a minute or 2 just to let me know if I've missed anything in the chat. Yeah. And mods, let me know if I missed anything as well. If there's something that I've missed, just give me some site panda one day. So yes, I see free. We have to be raised first in this time. Yeah. And I'm saying what I'm saying based upon the knowledge of our history and some decisions that our ancestors have made. Yeah, in terms of what constitutes and what doesn't constitute Africa.
But race is not an aspect of Africanness, though, is it? Because if you go to the Africans, Africans would say, "Oh no, I'm not a race. The concept of blackness is from the West." That's why I hear a lot of Africans saying.
Some people argue that the concept of Africanness is from the West. That's not the point. The point is that through our trajectory as a people, we have seen it fit through our liberation history to assert our blackness and our Africanness. Yes,
right.
And once you separate, if one is going to separate those 2 things, they are affirmed within particular contexts that need to be understood. Yes.
Yeah, so but we're very flexible.
The blackness, the blackness, and the statement I'm about to make is actually exemplary of our flexibility. The blackness that we assert is in relationship to the defense and the affirmation of our aesthetic. Yes, the fact that our aesthetic was demonized. It's also reflective of the fact that the most obvious collective physical trait that we share is our black skin. Yeah. Walter Rodney relates
and
to this. Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? And relate. I'll say our phenotypes, yeah, and or the variety of our phenotypes. Yeah, there is variation within African phenotypes. Yeah. And so
But the point I was making
define
about
ourselves.
flexibility.
Excuse me. Thank you. We define ourselves according to that energy, that vibration. Papa Garvey said it will be a beautiful day when we have a standard African race. That's what Papa Garvey said. Yeah. All right. And so when we get into the complexities of that, the variations are understood according to a particular standard. And once we understand that, there is no conflict. I am not, as much as I joke about this sometimes, I am not the most melanated African on the planet. All right. But it was not a conflict to me growing up when the most melanated was affirmed and asserted. Yeah, I never felt inadequate in my Africanness and my blackness because my skin complexion didn't replicate somebody that was in South Sudan, necessarily, right? If that makes sense, yeah. I understand the context, yeah. So I have direct experience with this thing, and there are legions of our ancestors who understood that, that vibration as well. One example of that is Mama Louise Little. Okay. One second, Mr. IC3. Another at gotkushTV says, I'm not ignoring you. I'm dealing with the brothers. I'm dealing with the brothers and sisters in the chat. The word Kemet equals black nation. Several words in African languages have racial context. This is true. This is true. Yeah.
Okay.
But as well, Mr. IC3, let's come back to Coffee's point about flexibility.
No. That's not my point because you didn't give me a chance to talk. So what's my point? What's my point if you didn't give me a chance to articulate?
I am not making your point, Coffee. I said it relates to your point. Okay.
But you don't know my point because I wasn't given a chance to make it.
Well, let's say that it relates to the terminology of flexibility then. All right. So in the sense of the fact that Mr. IC3, in response to our experiences as a people, we are allowed and are in fact duty bound to develop new social structure in order to meet the challenges of the now. Yeah. So let's say it was once sufficient for us to be cordoned off in our separate micronations, referred to as tribe. Meeting the challenges of the now demand that we have to relinquish that as a dominant social structure, as a dominant political structure, because we are under attack as a collective. Therefore, we must develop certain collective social formation, even if we never had that 100 years ago, 500 years ago. And I challenge anybody that suggests that we didn't have it, but even if we can't use the fact that we didn't have it then to not meet the challenges of the now in terms of social organization. Coffee, you've got 2 minutes to make the point that you was going to make.
Right, that's so you deal with me. All right. In terms of the semantics of the word the market, this is different from the flexibility argument, because that's us. And you know I hear that. So I'm not really married to the phonetics of the market because you seem allergic to the word the market. So if you want to refer to voluntary interactions as Ubuntu, then let's call it Ubuntu. The point is that there are only two ways to see cooperation: by force and by persuasion. Yeah. So whatever voluntary interactions that we have as Black people, whether we have associations and we are free to disassociate from those associations, then that is Ubuntu. You don't want to call it the market because you have this socialist allergic reaction to words like the market, so you don't want to refer to voluntary interactions among Black people as the market in action. All right, well, it's just Ubuntu in action. And the thing about flexibility, I was just saying to IC3 that socialists like you are very flexible on the race question because you worship people like Franz Fanon and Mr. Nkrumah, and we all know who their bedfellows were.
All right, that's it, brothers and sisters. We have to wrap up right about now. The only thing I'm going to say is that I didn't challenge the terminology in the market. It was the nature of the market as propagated by the system, the global system that we live in. And the point I'm making is that it's a rhetorical ethic, it's deception, it is a lie. And that's the only point I'm going to make on that. Another day we'll come back to Fanon and Nkrumah and nationalist appreciation and critique of them and their work and their bedfellows and so on and so forth. All right. Giving thanks, brothers and sisters. We appreciate you. Tune in tomorrow for more. Coming from gotkushTV with Elder Cecil Gutsmore and race in the hands of white power since the Holocaust, brothers and sisters. Yes, indeed, a very, very important topic, and I look forward to you joining us for that particular topic right there. Tendai Mwadi, we're thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Muzimu Makulu. We give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodiye, African power and African liberation for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Mina baka busi nengre me fele sama.
Mina baka busi nengre mine pele obiama. Mina baka busi nengre me fele sama.
Mina baka busi nengre mine pele obiama. Mina baka busi nengre me fele sama.